Okay, it's live.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's about 12:01.2. I'd like to call our meeting together. My name is Jim Walsh. I'll be chairing this afternoon's meeting. I'd like to have my fellow commissioners introduce themselves, then we'll go around the room and have everyone introduce themselves.
Douglas Kellner.
Gregory Peterson.
Kimberly Galvin.
Paul Collins.
Joe Burns.
Hannah Svizzero.
Pat Campion.
Tom Connolly.
John Conklin.
George Stanton.
Bill McCann.
Liz Hogan.
Bob Brehm, and if I could just mention, Commissioner Quiller called today to tell us, she called yesterday and apologized for not being able to come because she doesn't like to miss our meetings, but she is definitely not feeling well. And she called back today and sounded that much worse than yesterday to say she made the right choice. She didn't want to infect us all with her cold.
Well, we miss
But she
her.
apologizes for not being able to come.
I don't know what it would be. I've known Commissioner Quilla since my first time on here, and I'll bet you she has about a 99.9% attendance record. I'm sure this bothers her greatly. Going around the room, please.
Bob Warren, election operations.
Tom Gilbert, New York State Commission on Quality of Care and Advocacy for Persons with Disabilities.
Amy Allo, League of Women Voters of New York State.
Jason Litwack, Assembly Election Council.
Don Ward, election commissioners association.
Thank you all. The first item of business, the minutes of the March 3rd, 2011 meeting.
I move the adoption of the minutes as printed.
And a second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Unit updates. Bob Brehm and Bob going along. Bob do a double duty here. Okay.
Well, I think some of the highlight items.
Excuse me, I should also add that Todd Valentine is not here today. He's also sick. I don't think there's any relationship between the sickness and the
That's how rumors get started.
It's bipartisan. One from each party is absent today from sicknesses that are not related. Excuse me, please continue.
Sure. Yes, we're all surviving the spring colds. One item of note is the certification to the Federal Election Assistance Commission of what we believe is compliance with the requirements for Title III certification that Todd and I submitted last Friday. It should start the discussions with the EAC for the use of any residual funds, as we call it, for the shoebox program, that they reimburse the counties for expenses they already had that are allowable, and to start the expenditure of funds to the administration of a federal election. It's one of the items with the the Federal Election Assistance Commission. My book was on the mic.
You can do that when I'm speaking.
That there's a move afoot to change abolish the Election Assistance Commission and also the funding issues in Washington. But I think we were at that point in our time where we had done what was necessary in the Title III, working to document, according to the state plan, those items that we had put in the plan that we would use as our gauge that things were being completed and were completed. So we submitted that, and we wait for the further conversation with the EAC on the shoebox program. For some time, the EAC had indicated an effort to give guidance to counties on this program. We still have not received that guidance. They don't have a majority. They only have 2 of 4 commissioners. So I think that might be part of the delay in giving us guidance, that they may need a majority in order to issue the policy. But certainly we look forward to continuing that effort because our counties are really interested in how that shoebox program will help them to finish the implementation issues. One other item that we worked on, and actually we were ahead of schedule, which was the review of the internal controls with the units, and to update the documents that were our report was due to Division of Budget by May. We submitted it already, and we had 2 new items during that internal control review with the units. One was public information to add MOVE Act compliance items as a unit responsibility. to update their internal controls as to how that is going to be completed. And the second was through election operations with the usability issues as a unit item for them to add to that internal controls document. One other, I think the last item that was a substantial amount of time other than the routine work of the agency, and it crossed over a number of units, was working with the subcommittee of the Election Commissioners Association on the charts of items under the political calendar that are being discussed. We've had a number of conference calls, shared documents with each other. I know Don Wart's here, current president of the association. Don was on a lot of those phone calls, both that we were on and that the association was on their own. And I think it's been very helpful to have the dialogue as to what we agree on and the issues with, what are the existing challenges with the calendar as it exists and what might be ripe for consideration as they try and solve the issues going forward. So it was a lot of work, and it was very helpful, I think, from our perspective, and I think we shared a lot of good ideas. And those are the three major issues.
Thank you, Bob. Legal, Kim Galvin.
Thank you, Commissioner. Actually, the unit's been very busy. We finally, I finally submitted the letter to Judge Sharp and moved the status report to once a month or whenever is needed in the machine implementation case. Paul and I continue to talk with the Department of Justice infrequently now, trying to figure out a strategy for the last remaining issues there in that case, most notably the database that the Department of Justice is still making a determination on. We also worked with the Department of Justice still today on the last election's military ballot transmittals and some clarifications as to some of the county numbers. And unfortunately, despite repeated efforts, Nassau County refuses to give us any updated information. We've tried in writing a few times, we've tried phone calls, so unfortunately I'm sorry to say that we'll have to be reporting them as delinquent to the Department of Justice. There's nothing else I can do to give them the simple information, clarifications, but they just won't give it to us. So that's
I'll make a phone call on that, see if we can light a fire under them.
I would appreciate that. I just, I hate to tell the Department of Justice that we're unable to get them without some sort of terrible action, but we've tried the regular routine channels, and it doesn't seem to be working. As Bob said, we have participated in a lot of the meetings on the statutory changes needed to move the primary. We have also provided the Department of Justice with a written report that was due by April 1st as to all the progress that we've made, outlining all the meetings that we've had, all the conversations that we've tried to do, all of the calendars that we've created in an effort to show them that the state board is doing whatever we can to encourage the legislature to take a hard look at this and try to bring itself into ensured compliance as we move forward, which is an effort. We've also spent a great deal of time on the federal litigation cases that are still brewing with regard to discovery of documents and reviewing of motions. We've also continued to monitor any of the other cases that the board is involved in. We're still waiting for decisions in the Schultz case, the Redlick case, and the Nassau County case, where motions to dismiss have been made, and Paul did get a good decision in the Dramatic case. His motion to dismiss was granted by Judge Hurd down there. We continue to work on the development of the state legislative, or the board's package of legislative changes. I mean, granted, it's been a difficult effort in the sense that a great deal of us think that we should be focused almost singularly on the moving of the primary and to continue to reiterate that it's a priority. But there are some bills that were added to last year's that are some cleanup that are good. I think good bills, one in particular for the counties and one just replacing some language that was inadvertently omitted last year. I know that Bob talked with me offline, and we need to do some federal reach out as well on the retention bill for ballot retention that you have in your packets, but we'll do that as well. We finalized our section of the annual report. We've started to update our conference materials, all of the routine things. And interestingly, there's a special election in the 26th congressional district that people forget about it. On Friday, the Department of Justice called, and they said, well, it's the 45th day before that election. Did all the ballots go out? I said, is it really already? And they said, yeah. And I said, oh, and they said, you're still under that consent decree. So luckily, Public Information and Tom Connolly had been getting the information, so it was an much easier answer for me than I was anticipating. And they were also thinking that their government was going to shut down. So they were telling me how to communicate with them in the event that they were not allowed to go to their office. So it was a pretty interesting Friday afternoon call. But I'm working with Tom to go over and his unit, obviously. That's just.
Kim, the bottom line is the ballots did all.
They did. They did all go out, and they all went out on time. But again, there's more reporting inconsistencies because people forget to put this or this doesn't match. Now it's requiring even more follow through to get the numbers right. So I know that the counties think that we do it for kicks, but really we don't want it. So if we could all pay attention when we do it the first time, it makes our lives a little bit easier. And I think that's it, unless you have anything to add, Paul.
Yeah, I'm having a great deal of fun with Nassau County. The motion to dismiss was argued on the 18th of March up here in Albany County. Judge Lynch asked for an additional memo of law and a couple of points of law. That's due the 18th of April. The brief to the Second Circuit on our appeal from the original discovery order in Nassau is due the 21st. That's the extent of our enlargement to perfect. So we'll get those out.
Third department.
Second department.
Second department.
Yeah, it doesn't transfer.
Not the Second Circuit.
When if Judge Lynch were to dismiss the case, that appeal would become moot. Then Nassau would take its appeal to the third department up here. But the fact that it's from an interlocutory order, it stays down in the second department. So we'll be filing that brief next week. And as Kim mentioned, Judge Hurd in the Northern District dismissed the challenge to the New York election law requirement that petitioners be New Yorkers, be registered to vote in New York. He did that on standing grounds, which is generally how we like to attack things in the first instance. And we are still waiting for Judge Kahn to issue an opinion with respect to our motion in the other case. And again, that's on standing. So we're having fun.
A lot of it.
Thank you both. Election operations, Anna, please.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have been busy in election operations. We did provide, as Council referenced, the proclamation and the certified candidates list in regard to the 26th Congressional District special election. We also issued a certificate of vacancy in the 27th Assembly District, which is in Kings County. We did review our internal controls with the two co-executive directors. We've added usability to our unit functions that are going to require some monitoring in regard to those. But we did resolve a couple of our existing internal controls risk factors. So I think we're at the same level. We just have different topics that constitute that document. We are making progress with our asset management product that is working through some data migration issues with the vendor. We're still going to be piloting that in Schenectady County. Our hopes is to have some sort of a very preliminary pilot in the month of April so that we can report to the commissioners at our conference at the end of the month. So that is still our goal with regard to that project. We have been processing county board requests. Some of them are purchasing additional privacy booths, and we do have a grant program to reimburse those for booths that runs fairly quickly. They usually receive their checks within 30 days. We have been assisting staff, as we always do, with quarterly testing, other voting system issues. The hot topic was village elections and whether they could or should use scanners in that village election cycle, so we were very busy along those lines. We are making considerable progress in conducting our county on-site audit of voting equipment and other assets in each of the counties. We're approaching the 2/3 of the state level as far as reviewing them, and we expect to do a number of them. We're going to be doing on-site monitoring in the 26th congressional district, so we expect to take another chunk out of that to-do list. We have some progress, so to speak, to report with regard to our certification efforts. Dominion has submitted their source code for both the fixes and related upgrades, and also a central count system. The source code is at Wiley, which is testing source code, reviewing source code. Those results will be provided to our own lab, SysTest, which now has a new name, SLI. Probably stands for SysTest Labs Incorporated, but in any event. They have submitted their hardware for the central count system to SysTest. We're waiting for a central count system to arrive here. That has not happened yet. ES&S has also source code at Wiley that's being reviewed. That's expected to be completed in about 3 to 4 weeks. Again, that testing will be provided to SysTest Labs for review, and we're waiting on a timeline from ES&S as to when some of those pieces will be migrating over, but we don't expect anything for at least another 3 to 4 weeks. We have not heard anything from ES&S on a central count system. There was some talk that they'd be submitting one, but we have not heard anything along those lines yet. For our part here in the office, we intend to do the functional testing for this round of certification testing to try and mitigate some of the cost for the vendors. It would be considerably less for us to do that testing and compensate the temp staff we bring in to do that than it would to pay SysTest. And I think we have better control of the time spent on that project. We have developed already the ballot designs that are going to be used for that functional testing, and we're in the process of developing functional test cases for the central count system and updating those cases on the 2 scanner upgrades so that we can follow along the same lines that we'd already established in the first round of testing. And other than that, working with Council's Office on the legislation and participating in the various conference calls and webcast meetings that Mr. Brehm referred to. I think we are, I'll defer to Joe to bring you up to date on the usability aspect of this. We do have a resolution for you in today's packet. And I think that's it.
You'll see it later on, the resolution where we're asking for $10,000 for a usability expert. We received, I believe, 4 offers from different experts and institutions to conduct a workshop or class here for our staff. And the prices range from approximately $5,000 to approximately $10,000. So $10,000 should be able to cover the cost of the workshop and any other travel. And assuming the board does approve, I think in the next couple of days, Phil, Anna, and I will probably put our heads together to determine who we want to go with. Beyond that, Bob Warren and I will be making a presentation at the conference later this month on ballot design and usability that I can promise you will knock your socks off. And I say that in all sincerity. You ought to. That's about it.
I'm looking forward to that. Can you tell us what's happening with the work with the Election Commissioners Association Committee on ballot design and usability and the Brennan Center very initial draft of legislation that they put together?
I think the commissioners, I think we all have the same goal in mind. I think that the commissioners took a second look at working hand in hand with the Brennan Center since they are suing us And I think that there was some concern on the commissioner's part that their own words might come back to haunt them, and they didn't want to derail any efforts that we had in regard to the litigation or in regard to any agreements that we might reach on their behalf. I would note for the board that Don Ward is here. Don is the president of the Commissioners Association. Perhaps he has comments that he'd like to share, but I do think we all have the same goal in mind, though they have backed off a bit from their desire to work hand in hand with Brenner and wait and see how we work out our efforts with the Brennan Center and the others that are involved in that particular litigation. I don't know what else we can discuss in open session, so I don't want to violate any rules, but I think we all know what the issues are. I don't know that there is one way to resolve all of our issues. There are probably a lot of bright ideas out there, but I think like anything else, we'll take the best of what we see and solve as many problems as we can. We would like a perfect system, but I think it's hard to have a perfect system, and it's hard to accommodate every nuance of everyone's concerns with the system that we do have. But I think we're on the right path, and we have a lot of good ideas to consider and to share. But again, it's in the course of this litigation, so I don't have anything else to add to bring us up to speed, unless the commissioner does.
Any other questions?
If you'd like, sir, I would be glad to say that the Commissioners Association is in a position of sort of taking a back seat with the Brennan Center, and our position is that at the present time, we would be more than happy to receive anything they wish to submit to us, but we feel that we should not make any decisions on anything until we see what's being submitted by the Brennan Center, by what's coming out of the usability study of the state board, and by what the other counties feel is necessary or possibly a better way to do things. So we're kind of right now in a gathering information point and don't really want to take a forward step until we see everything from everybody.
Very wise.
Thank you. NVRA, John Conklin.
Thank you, Commissioner. As you know, the annual conference is coming up at the end of the month. The whole unit is involved in a lot of preparations for that, so that's ongoing. We're continuing our nice voter audit visits. Since the last board meeting, Patrick and Greg have visited Cortland, Brehm, Chemung, Schuyler, Tioga, Tompkins, Albany, Clinton, Franklin, St. Lawrence, and Hamilton. We have a few counties remaining, plus the city of New York. The plan is to have all of the state completed by the end of June, before the local boards begin to field their crush from their local petitions. We sent out emails to the remaining counties to schedule those board visits, so if they're watching, please get back to us with your availability. Our consultation with the working group for compliance with Chapter 505 of the laws of 2010 has resulted in a non-technical guide for poll site accessibility and an updated survey instrument for which we have a resolution in the new business portion of the meeting. We have the usual volume of inquiries from the public and the press, in particular regarding the special election called in the 26th Congressional District, in addition to our FOIL requests. The units also assisted the 7 counties in the 26th Congressional District in getting out their absentee ballot materials and the ballots themselves. The annual report is being worked on. All units have submitted their different parts of the report, so it just has to be integrated, edited, and then finalized. We want to remind all the counties that their quarterly reports are due, so please get those in as soon as possible. We also have contract extensions that have been sent out for the various pots of grant money that the unit manages, so please return those if you have not already done so. And we also received the 2011 HHS Vote Grant Award Notice. There's also a resolution in the new business section for allocation of that pot of money as well. For the website, we've posted the following materials: the campaign finance unit's seminar schedule for the spring, the filer update, the campaign finance filing calendar, the new political calendar for 2011, certified ballot for the 26th Congressional District, political calendar for the 26th Congressional District, and results for the governor's race from last year by Assembly District. Do you have anything to add, Tom?
I think the only other thing I would mention that is in regards to the Chapter 505 compliance, what we have the resolution on is for the kind of the material aspect of that compliance, which is the non-technical guide and the survey tool. As part of that compliance, we're also going to be working with the various counties to identify and train staff to help them perform the surveying of the various poll sites to ensure that any new poll site would also be accessible, and we'll be working with CQC, Tom Gilbert's here from CQC APD, as well as to really flesh out the details so that we can have them to present to the commissioners at the conference at the end of the month.
That's it for PIO, unless there's any questions.
Question? Thank you, gentlemen. Campaign Finance, Liz Hogan, please.
Thank you, Commissioner. I did submit a unit update. I'm not sure if it's in your packet, but I'll go over briefly what I did put in the update. As I normally do, I'd like to give you some data about the previous month's work volume. In the intake and processing section of Campaign Finance, we opened 177 new committees, terminated 242. Registered committees to date number just over 11,000. Our call center staff, which is basically two, and then some people, a couple of people on contributing on a when they can basis, so sometimes three, handled almost 700 telephone calls in March. In March, we had completed the writing of and the implementation of a new termination of committee procedure. Bill and I had discussed it and determined that a greater uniformity of application of factors of allowing for termination was needed, and so we had staff write a new report, and that has been implemented, and we're working through a few kinks in that. As well, one of the other issues that presents itself very frequently is the resignation of treasurers, and Bill and I again sat down and discussed that we need a uniform application in deciding when treasurers can resign and what has to be done before they can do so. So staff is in the process of writing and finalizing a procedure, and we'll implement that as well. As you're aware, we were statutorily mandated to recalculate the regs that appear in 6214 in February. We did this. The reg is still pending. It's at the Department of State as of now, and it's our understanding it will be finalized by the end of the month. The newly calculated limits do appear in the statute, and they do appear on our website. And there's a caveat that says basically that we anticipate those limits being in effect once the reg process we've gone through. From Bill and my perspective, we've talked about it, and our position to people who are calling us is that those limits as they're set forth in 6214 right now are the limits that are appropriate. So those are the recalculated and higher limits than appeared in the statute last year. We did submit the return date for a judgment for the January periodic non-filers was March 17th. That judgment is not signed yet. The education and training part of our unit, our staff, has been working with IT very, very closely over the past months, and projects they're working on include the redesign of the campaign finance section of our website to make it more usable from our perspective in terms of the discussions that we have with our callers and how we think that they need information presented in order to get the most out of it. And IT has been very good in working with us to try to get that format in place. We are continuing to work with them on a schedule that the staff has worked out between them on that software. issue, that the redesign in terms of the usability. It's not, as we've said, it's not a web-based system, but the usability function of it and what here internally we will get out of this different software will be markedly better. So we're continuing to work on that. We're also working with IT, and George will probably talk about this further, but I'll just touch on it, that our staff is involved in working on the internal intra-agency software. We call it our FIDUS, which is our financial data system, and it's the screen that comes up when we're in the system and looking at a particular committee and getting all kinds of information about that committee, from the treasurer to the registration date to the filings and all of this. And we're working with IT on that as well, and I'm sure George has some more technical kind of things that he could talk about, but that's what time, from my perspective, is being devoted to. The education staff has finalized, and it's posted to the website, the spring seminar training schedule. It is held in May and June. We've got numerous calls because we do have the link for registering for the seminars on the website, but we've gotten some calls because people can't find it. And I'll just say, if anybody asks about the link, you have to use that scroll bar on the bottom to get all the way to the right-hand side of our web page, the home page of our website, because you can't see it unless you scroll over. So if anybody asks about registering for seminars, please tell them you have to do that. The audit staff is working on a number of audits. We meet regularly with them, and we have staff meets between themselves. You'll see that one of the audit issues is on for your consideration today. We worked on the 2010 annual report, submitted it to John. We've been working on conference materials for our conference at the end of this month. We, as has been said by a number of people, worked on reviewing with Bob and Todd the campaign finance and enforcement sections of the internal controls report. And from the time that we assessed our risks and identified our deficiencies in campaign finance and enforcement, I think 2 years ago was the first time that we actually, in one place in a report, put on paper a significant number of deficiencies that we were working on at the time, but that definitely were, it wasn't so much the risks, because our risks are relatively low. It's not like ops risk, maybe relative to the machines or something like that, but deficiency-wise, there were some issues that had developed over a long period of time that we had identified, and I'm very pleased to report to you that the review of that report really showed significant and dealing with those deficiencies in an incredible way. So we've done a lot of work over the past couple of years to work and eliminate the deficiencies, and I feel at this point, we've instituted more efficiencies in our unit than has been there for a significant period of time. So, Bill, do you have anything you want to add? Otherwise, I'm finished.
Well, we just have one litigation matter that like a few minutes in the executive session to update the board, and if we could have that discussion, that'd be great.
Any further questions? Thank you. Right to you, George Stanton.
Afternoon. In no particular order of importance, IT has been working on several projects. One of the things we're doing is working on the migration from our own group-wise email to the statewide nice mail, they call it, the statewide email system. We've been waiting we had to purchase a lot of licenses and migration software, and I think we're getting about to the end of that procurement. So we have another meeting with OFT this Thursday. I'm not sure where we are on the schedule of migrating over. It was the end of April, but it might be kicked back a few weeks because we had to wait for some of that procurement. We are working on the EFS software, as Elizabeth said, in addition to working on the last bunch of changes that the group from Campaign Finance gave us. We're also doing a complete update of the way the software is presented to make it more aesthetically usable for the consumers. The other projects you mentioned, the FITUS, we call it the FITUS re-engineering. We had asked for money from the state to do some work, 3-4 years ago when we came up with the county stuff. They've never given us any money, so about 1.5 years ago, I told my staff to go ahead and start working on re-engineering it. We've had basically one person working on it in that time, and he's really done a good job, Dennis K. Rose, of re-engineering it. We presented it to Campion Finance here about a month ago, I guess, and got a lot of positive feedback, so we're going to go ahead and continue to put it in a development area where they can look at it. Unfortunately, Dennis is retiring within the next month or so it's going to have to be turned over to a couple of other of our programmers, which are very capable of doing it. It's just going to probably slow things down when it's added to the rest of their required things that they have to do. We did do the statewide enrollment stats on April 1st and published them to the website. We worked with the co-directors to update our internal controls report, submitted our annual report to PIO, and we've been helping NTS in the conversion of Monroe County's voter registration database from Easy Vote, which is a Hamer Enterprises out of Texas. They're the only one in the state that used that, but NTS sold them on a contract, so they'll be their NTS's 50th county, so that'll help standardize a little better our statewide system. And in a nutshell, that's about it. Unless anybody has any questions.
Thanks, George. Any old business anyone has that we would be considering? If not, we'll move on to new business. Vote on a resolution for allocation of 2011 HHS poll site access funds. John Conklin, Tom Conley, and Pat Campion.
Well, as I said in the unit update, the resolution is to allocate the funds from the 2011 HHS vote grant. It's according to the same formula we've been using for the county since 2004, so it's very straightforward.
Anyone have any questions?
I move the resolution.
Second. Favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Before I go into item B, I understand we have someone who would like to address us, Don Gilbert from the Commission on Quality of Care and Advocacy for Persons with Disabilities. We're going to be considering a resolution approving Chapter 505 Compliance Plan Non-Technical Guide to Poll Site Access. If you would, please, Tom.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Commissioners. We've been invited by the State Board of Election. I direct a number of protection and advocacy programs for the Commission on Quality of Care, and one of those is protection and advocacy for voter access. And it's to assist persons with disabilities in creating an inclusive, accessible voting experience. And I think we've had a fairly unique relationship with the State Board of Elections over the years, and that we've been of some assistance to them, I like to think. And we were recently invited to assist in the Access Bill enactment, where we'll be conducting a statewide training, and when I say we, it's the two HAVA agencies, which is Catskill Center for Independence and the Center for Independence of the Disabled in New York, an upstate and downstate division. We'll be conducting, I think, 9 trainings, I think, depending on attendance. And that will be basically to assist in educating those individuals that will be responsible within the local districts for surveying their polling sites and reporting back to the State Board of Elections on the accessibility of their polling sites. So we'll be basically training people in how to survey what an accessible polling place should look like. And we're looking forward over the next couple of months in assisting the State Board in moving that along. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your service. All right, we will take a vote on the resolution, or we have a motion to vote on the resolution approving Chapter 505.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Commissioner, just I think it's helpful to remind the counties that may be listening, well, we mentioned a new survey. The survey has not changed. It's the same survey that we have used. And I think I reported at our last full meeting. Most of the documents are the same. They're only updated. We published them. The first guide was published in 2006, and with the group's help, we updated to be more current the non-technical guide. The new material mostly is in the training program that will be offered to help provide training to the county people who are going to do who have to actually conduct the surveys or review the surveys to make sure that they understand, if they're not in full compliance, are there options that we can use to bring them into compliance with the use of some of the federal funds that we have available, or go pick a new site. So it's not all that different than what we have been doing since 2006. The survey is the same instrument, so people won't be nervous. The training is going to be updated, and we will run them through the assistance of the PAVA agencies, and I think that's great help to us, using the money that you previously approved at the resolution you just adopted. The HHS money is available to do the surveys and to pay for training. So it is a pot of money under the federal program that certainly would be good to use to train your people, so that in any future sites that need to be surveyed, that the county has staff available, well-trained, and able to comply with the program.
Thank you, very helpful. Item C, vote on a resolution to authorize expenditure of HAVA funds for usability and training workshop. Ann and Joe Burns, anything you want to make comment?
Like I explained before, this is allowing for up to $10,000 to be spent. That should be enough to cover any of the experts that we've reached out to already. Oh yeah, it is. Ann reminded me. It is a workshop that'll take place here at our offices.
Any questions?
I move the resolution.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Item D, vote on the 2011 proposed legislation. Kim and Paul.
As I mentioned earlier, this is what we view as, if you're looking at it, the first few we've had before, the last three on the back page. I didn't realize it was double-sided copying. I got confused there for a while, so just make sure that you flip it over. All in our efforts to save money, I say to the camera. Are the new ones for your consideration. And these do not include, as I've said privately and publicly a number of times, the mass amount of changes that will be required if and when the primary is moved. And I think it's important that when we send these to the legislature, some of which are already on Assemblywoman Millman's agenda, actually, for this week, that we reemphasize again for the Department of Justice in furtherance of our compliance efforts that we prioritize the movement of the primary. So if it's without objection when we send that letter, I'd like to make sure we point that out again. I know that I sound like a broken record. I'm sorry for that, but they are watching. Sure.
On proposal 1103, which we call exempt election workers from jury duty, I'm going to vote for it, but I still suggest that we would be in a better position to accomplish this if we change the way it's presented, so that instead of exempting election workers from jury duty, we should say that election service counts as jury duty. And in several states, for example, they call what we call inspectors, they call election jurors. And indeed, in colonial times and in New York up until about 1860, election workers were selected just like jurors were selected from the citizen pool and drawn at lot and said, okay, you're going to be the election clerks. So I'm just saying, I think that we might be able to
find out this
I don't know.
Wow.
I
No one
studied
can
election
dispute it.
history.
So would your proposal be to change the whole mechanism, or just
Well,
have it count?
well,
Or to actually draw from that pool?
As I say, instead of writing it up as an exemption from jury duty, which the chief judge
Yeah,
is
it's gonna freak
adamantly
out,
opposed
yeah.
to, for good reasons, I understand why they oppose that. If we presented it as counting as jury service, it would have the same effect without the baggage that might make it easier for the legislature to swallow.
I think that's perfectly logical.
It's logical.
So I just throw out that as a suggestion.
Oops,
In the
that's
meantime, we should move our package.
Is that a motion?
It is.
Do you have a second?
Second, I'm
Second
sorry.
from Nassau County. We have a second. All
I'm
in
just
favor?
thinking, because it's logical, it'll never go through.
Going down this way.
That's the problem.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Now we have our cases. If there's no problem, we can accept the resolution, but we do have a request to go into executive session. I'm just saying we could vote on the cases.
The cases we can vote on, I have no comments on them, so I'll move the list of dispositions as proposed by the Campaign Finance.
Before you take a vote, may I ask that, could you just give me 1 second?
A second, so it's officially on the floor.
Second.
In the interim, I could remind everyone that their financial disclosure forms, boy, I sound like one of those people, are due May 16th. Apparently, you can't file them online until you receive your email on April 15th. For all of you people that try to get ahead of the curve, I applaud your efforts. However, I'm sorry they didn't tell me that when I first sent the
I thought it
wrong
was late.
email.
Until you sent the second email.
Okay.
I will continue to harp on that. So if you don't want to be on that list, okay.
Regarding CMP 09155, I was proposing that the determination be changed just a bit to add that it shall serve as notice to the person complained of relative to the conduct, that the conduct was unacceptable. So I had meant to add that to the document, and it had slipped my mind, and I thought this was the most effective way of doing it, and then after the meeting, I'll change that wording. Is that okay?
Okay, so
So as amended was
I'll
09?
restate that, right. So removing the list as with the correction to 09155.
Second. All in favor as amended?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We should set our date for our next meeting before we go into executive session.
I would hope we could do it the week of May 9th, because the week before that and the week after that are going to be problems for me.
I'm good. And you'll have to clear with everyone too, all right?
I'll check with you.
How about Tuesday, May 10th?